Happy Tuesday, historians. Today we'll be discussing the end of the Cold War and the ideological struggle between the United States and capitalism and Soviet Union and communism. This period of about 45 years, as you all know and as you have learned over the last couple of weeks, was defined by an arms race, a development of weapons by both the Soviet Union and the United States in order to gain influence in the global world and to ensure that any sort of conflict by either side would result in mass casualties and mass retaliation. However, the Soviet Union, really economically speaking, started to struggle as this Cold War continued into the 80s and 90s. Food lines, food shortages, unhappy citizens, things started to get very bad and very difficult for the common citizen in the Soviet Union, mainly because of economic slowdown. When Stalin initially transitioned the Soviet Union into the massive industrial society it is today, it was super, super successful. But as it continued and as this struggle for influence with the United States continued, the economy really started to slow down. It wasn't producing the amount that it had initially produced. And as it started to slow down, people in the country began to become more and more upset with the status quo. And along comes Gorbachev. He implemented two reforms that we're going to talk about. The perestroika, which was the restructuring of the economy to help fix this economic slowdown within the communist Soviet Union, and glasnost, which was an effort to give more people the freedom of speech and to kind of lighten the restrictions on ideas within the communist country of the Soviet Union. From 1989 to 1990, several things started to show that the Cold War may be coming to an end. Berlin Wall came down, and protests in the outer regions of the Soviet Union and the outer countries, the border countries, began to boil up and begin to show that they were tired of being under the Soviet Union rule. In 1991, Gorbachev was kidnapped by hardline communists, resigns, and the Soviet Union breaks up. But there were several lasting impacts from this struggle. 15 independent countries are formed from the Soviet Union, Russia being the largest and the one that inherited the Soviet weapons, including all of those nuclear warheads. Germany was reunified as one country. There was no more Iron Curtain, but countries behind it were significantly less developed because of their isolation from the Western world and because of the harsh rule of the communist regime in the Soviet Union. They were much, much less developed. The US became a dominant country economically and through global influence. And even today is probably considered one of the most significant countries in the world. You could argue that the Cold War is still going on today, as Russia and the United States still aren't the best of friends, even though they are allies. Things are not as good as they could be between the two countries, and there are still ideological struggles between communism and capitalism today that we can see in our news and in our politics on a regular basis. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Please continue to fill out the form and have a great Tuesday.